All right, you are now tuned into the Rotated Views podcast. I am your host, Jimmylee Velez. I'm here with Gabe, Kurt, Tricia, Goose, Mike, and Lee. Attitudes in Reverse. In this episode, we have special guests Mike Mumola and the crew from A.I.R, Tricia and Kurt. We cover topics that range from mental health, suicide prevention, volunteer work, saving lives, and much more. We wrap the episode up with quotes from Anne Frank and Albert Einstein. Guys, if you're new, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to download and subscribe. We drop a new episode every Tuesday morning for your listening pleasure. Kicking things off, Kurt, Tricia, Mike, thank you all for joining us. We appreciate it. Thank you for welcoming us into this awesome building. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation. We're grateful for it.
Thank you for coming out.
Absolutely. All right, so let's jump right into it. So for those of us who do not know, can first, Kurt, start with you, explain who you are, what you do, and then Tricia, and then explain A.I.R.
Oh, that's dangerous. You want me to go first before my wife? Oh, my goodness. Uh-oh. I am Tricia Baker's husband. I'm well trained, and I do whatever she tells me to do.
Nice.
We're co-founders of Attitudes in Reverse, or A.I.R. And so many years ago, our son, when he was 15 years old, was diagnosed with a mental health disorder.
Yeah.
And just by sheer luck, we happen to know somebody who was a psychologist, and she referred us. He was acting a little unusually, my wife said, and told us that we really need to get him evaluated, find out what was happening, and we did that. So we found out early on that he had a mental health disorder, and
Sure.
The long and the short, I know we have a lot of topics to talk here, so I don't want to take up all the time,
absolutely.
but it's we tried to get him the help that he needed, and we went through many different types of therapies and so forth, and I think we just unfortunately ran out of time.
Yeah.
And a couple weeks before his graduation of high school, unfortunately we lost Kenny to suicide.
Wow.
And after the loss of Kenny, and kind of during his decline, really, he was a very popular young man. He dealt with he associated with all types of groups. If somebody saw him in the mall, regardless of their background or anything, everybody said hello to Kenny. Everybody loved Kenny, so to speak, is what we like to say. And it was true. It was true. But as his diagnosis and his illness progressed, he was much harder to be friends with because the illness was really kind of taking over as far as how he was.
Sure.
And unfortunately, he lost hope a few weeks before graduation from high school. We think part of that was everybody was kind of going off on their own. He was still kind of struggling a little bit, and things had declined. So we really ran out of time. So we lost Kenny, and there was a lot of stigma surrounding his death. And so we really were motivated to transition our efforts from trying to help Kenny to realizing there were many other people out there dealing with the same type of issues, and there's really nobody representing them.
Yeah.
And my wife and I, Tricia, we were experienced in this. We knew what was happening in the system. We knew there's a lot of failures in the system and a lot that needs to happen. So that's really where we started. We didn't really know what we were going to do or how we were going to do it.
Yeah.
So we literally set up at a table in front of Rita's Ice, just talk to people. And I'll let Trish pick this up because I don't want to tell the whole story. But
Sure.
There's a lot happening, and ultimately we created Attitudes in Reverse, or A.I.R, to kind of help those other people who maybe don't even realize they're dealing with something, a mental health disorder. Because youth, that's one of the issues is with young people, they just know they don't feel good. They have some pain, they have some misery, they might think that's just normal, and that's not okay. It's just not okay to not be okay, so to speak. We really want to pass along that word and raise awareness about what that means to the children and to their parents and so forth, so that people are educated, because well, we found after we lost Kenny in our support groups that about 90% of people have no idea that their loved ones are suffering from mental health disorder when after they lose them. However, in retrospect, if you start looking at signs and symptoms, there are signs and symptoms.
Sure.
The issue is it's very similar to normal childhood development.
Gotcha.
And so it gets very complicated.
I'm bet.
But I want to make sure my wife has her time, so make sure she gets to talk.
100%.
So I'll let you pick it up. There's a lot more, but
we want to hear it all.
Please.
Well, I'm going to talk a little more about Kenny.
Please do.
Yes, absolutely.
It was really hard for him because when a young person lives with a mental health disorder, they feel they have to hide it. Mm-hmm. They're embarrassed by it. They don't want to tell anyone. So he actually lied to his friends and his peers for over 3.5 years. Wow. He told everybody he had mono. And, young people are smart, and they figure out you can't have mono for 3.5 years.
Right.
And so it opened up the doors to some, I wouldn't say he was bullied, but some unkind behaviors.
Sure.
There were even some teachers who didn't understand. They thought he was just acting out. It was a behavioral issue as opposed to it was actually a biological brain illness. So that's one of the things that we really want to get across to young people as well as adults is that, you wouldn't tell a young person with cancer, well, you can't go to the party this weekend until you make your cancer go away. It's not a behavioral issue. There's an underlying brain illness, and let's address the brain illness. Sure. And then once we get that under control, then let's talk about behavior. So we did lose Kenny. It's 10 years. I still get upset talking about him, but I talk about him during every one of our presentations. And the main messages I want to share about Kenny's life is that he was very bright, and people don't understand that people who struggle with mental health disorders, they tend to be highly intelligent. They tend to have an IQ at least 10 points higher than those in the general population. And when Kenny was 6, he had a learning disability, and he was tested by the school, and we found out he had dyslexia. But we also found out at the age of 6, he had the long-term memory of a 29-year-old.
Wow.
Yeah, so he was very bright.
Wow.
But then we also share the message that he said goodbye to every one of his friends the day before he died.
Wow.
And it wasn't until after he died that at least half a dozen young people said, Mrs. Baker, I had a bad feeling, but I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to get Kenny angry at me. I didn't want to get Kenny in trouble. So the message we leave with students is we give them the signs and symptoms of suicide, of the onset of mental health disorders, and we talk about how crucial it is for them to be a friend, to be kind, to help out if they see a friend who might be struggling. And we've developed in-crisis cards, and we share these at every presentation, and we get a response rate anywhere from 6 to 17% of kids who respond are in some sort of crisis, either themselves or are concerned for a friend in crisis.
Wow.
So, losing Kenny was really hard, but I know what we're doing now is what he would want us to do, because he was that kind kid. He had a good heart. And I'll tell you just another quick thing about Kenny. Like when Kenny was in the psychiatric hospitals, there's a lot of kids from foster care and psychiatric hospitals, and they show up with literally just the clothes on their backs. And Kenny used to give them his clothes.
Wow.
Because he knew mom and dad could bring him more. He knew they didn't have it, and he knew he could get his own. So he just had a kind heart. And that's what we find is that these people who live with mental health disorders, they tend to be some of the kindest, most empathetic people, and unfortunately in the world, most people don't understand that, and they're open to judging and criticizing and labeling, and that's what we want to change, and we want to start with young people.
Sure.
Wow, thank you for sharing. So from there, how does A.I.R become, what it is today? So I know you said you stood out in front of a couple, was it storefronts and handing out pamphlets or just information? So how'd that all happen? Yeah,
it's a multifaceted approach. I mean, it was again, as I said, we really didn't know exactly what we needed to do. We just knew there was a big issue here, and we knew that a lot of people were not understanding what the real issue was, because in fact, the day that we lost Kenny, the neighbors were being called by many of the media outlets. Wow. Trying to find essentially the dirty little secret that might have been going on in the baker. I mean, what did we do that our son would literally go and die by suicide? And so that was really kind of what the media was thinking. And fortunately, we happen to be very fortunate, is a friend of ours happened to be in the media, and we asked her, well, what do we do? Because they're going to write a story. Right. And so what she did is she essentially brokered a deal where we were allowed to write our story, the truth, about what was happening with Kenny, his diagnosis, and the process that we went through trying to help him. I mean, we had everything in place that if you wrote it on paper, Kenny should be with us today. And he's not. So, it's more than just which family, which service, sometimes you can have everything that you need, and it's tough. And so we were able to do that. So we were really kind of thrust into this advocacy the same morning that we lost Kenny, because we had to make a decision literally within hours of his death. Do we let somebody else write the story, or are we going to be involved in that story? and we've always been very active, so to speak, and so we just literally just took a slight turn, and it was very painful for us because we were still dealing with his death. But literally a few weeks later, we were raising money for other organizations trying to help get the word out on this, because you have to take what you got, right? The cards you're dealt, and you just go with it, and that's pretty much what we did. So we started raising awareness, finding out what was happening out there. And it took a while, and I'll let Trish tell this story because we literally got a break. We knew at some point we need to get in front of kids, and when you go as a couple lost a student, schools really are not kind of open to that. They're not really sure what you're going to say, what you're going to do, and we understand that completely because you have to protect the children, right?
100%.
And we're not. We're not teachers. We're not trained, so to speak, in that respect, although we are now by self-trained. But so we got a break. One of our friends, who is now a close friend, was one of Tricia's students, and she got us in. I'll let Trish tell that part of the story, since that's your story.
So I wear many hats.
Nice.
So I wear a dog training hat.
Wow.
And it's just been an amazing journey how the dog training and mental health advocacy have overlapped. And I've met so many wonderful people through dog training. And one of my classes, I was sharing story of Kenny probably about a year or so after he died. And my friend said, well, why don't you come to our school? And it was Piscataway High School, and she invited us in. And we put together a presentation working with some other mental health experts. And we presented it. And before we were done for the day, we were getting invitations to come back again.
Wow.
And then we spoke with another high school that year. And then it just started growing from there. People started hearing about us. And I would get a call, please come to my school. And, it just keeps growing and growing. And I've spoken to over 80,000 students, mostly me, face-to-face.
Wow.
And I think that's one of the things that makes us successful, is that it's a face-to-face presentation. Kenny's story touches everybody. In the beginning of the presentation, we talk about mental health, and we talk about statistics, how 1 in 4 are affected. And the kids are laughing, and it's like, it's you, it's not me. And then I get to Kenny's story, and you can hear a pin drop, and they listen. And then that segues into signs of suicide, and they listen, because they all have a friend who's struggling. Every single one of them has somebody who's struggling, and they want to help them, and they don't know how. And most adults are not giving them the words or the tools in order to reach out and to get help. We have had at least 3 times. Once the school called an ambulance to rush a girl to the emergency room right after our presentation. They had no idea how much she was in crisis. And then 2 other times we had students actually escorted by a school staff to the emergency room because the students were in crisis and they had no idea they could reach out and ask for help. So we give them permission to ask for help.
Love it. And how did the name Attitudes in Reverse come about?
That was really our daughter's wordplay. She's an English major, and we were talking about mental health being like air. You don't see it, but it's all around us. And then we started thinking about, what can A.I.R stand for? And it just came out. Within minutes, it just came out. And then how we really started, we started with a T-shirt.
Yeah.
A T-shirt contest. And the goal behind the T-shirt is like a truly grassroots effort that people wear the T-shirt and they're like, hey, it's a really cool T-shirt. What does A.I.R mean?
Yeah.
And it allows you to start a one-on-one conversation about good mental health and suicide prevention. So that was really the genesis of it. And then a year later, after Kenny died, because we started right away, Caitlin received the Governor's Award from the Mental Health Stigma Council.
Wow.
Yeah, and that kind of put us on a path.
Yeah.
It put us in front of people. And then probably 6 months later, I said our little dog Mickey won a national award. He won an award from the American Kennel Club.
Wow.
And we got to go to Florida, and it was on TV, and it was really exciting. He won our first national award. And it just kind of keeps going from there.
Yeah.
You know, and people hear about us, and they want us to come into their schools, and because they know more and more the teachers are starting to understand we have to have these conversations about mental health with our students. And some teachers, you know, I feel bad for teachers because they did not go to school to be counselors, yet they're addressing all these issues with their students. So they like when we come in because we put it out there. We don't have any stigma, and we just deal with it, and the kids know it comes from our hearts, and they appreciate it. And again, I think that's why we're so successful, because it comes from our hearts.
Definitely. So let's talk a little bit about the programs you all offer. Just kind of go, you know, one down, you know, down the lane with what's, you know, explain a little bit about the awareness outreach.
Okay, so I'll start. Coming Up for A.I.R is the first program we developed, and that's for middle school through, actually we have a program for college level as well. And we talk about underlying mental health issues, and then we segue into signs of suicide. We started looking within the last couple years about the suicide rate for those 12 and under has actually doubled in the last 10 years.
Wow.
So we knew talking to kids in even middle school is not, it's not young enough. So we created the Toolkit program, and that is designed for 2nd through 6th graders. And it's a really fun program. We get them up and moving, and we teach them some deep breathing exercises. We talk about their brain, and we talk about brain health and steps that they can take in order to have a healthy brain.
Right.
And then we let them know that, well, sometimes brains, just like any other organ in the body, they can get sick. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, you can't control your thoughts or your feelings, you know, maybe you need to talk to somebody. Maybe you're feeling like you're in crisis, and you need to talk to a trusted, safe adult. Then we incorporated, because as Kurt mentioned earlier, we used to go to public places, and we found nobody wanted to talk about mental health or suicide. But we would have our dogs with us. People would come up and pet your dog.
Yeah.
And after you talked about your dog, and they'd talk about their dog, and then they would say, what does A.I.R mean? And it broke down that barrier of stigma. And 9 out of 10 people who stopped all had a story.
Wow.
It's just it took the dog to open up and start that conversation.
So is that the Pause for Minds?
Yes, that's
Okay.
Pause for Minds. And that too has expanded. So we're going to be launching our own therapy dog program this summer. And we're also doing crisis response with our dogs. We sadly had too many suicides in Mercer County this past half a year. And after each suicide, what the counselors found, the teachers found, the superintendents found, is the kids didn't want to talk. But we would walk into the building with dogs, and the effect would change completely. So the kids would sit on the floor talking to the dogs, and then the counselors would sit on the floor, and the kids started talking. And they started to talk about their friend they lost and started their healing process. So I'm working with Hopewell Valley School District, and our goal is to have 3 to 4 dogs on every school property, so that if a student is having a tough day, is dealing with school refusal, they can go visit a dog, and boom, within 5 minutes, most kids are back in school after visiting with the dog.
Wow, that's awesome. And 2 more that I have here is Community of Kindness and Hero.
Okay, so actually there's one more on there
that
we got left off. So we have a traveling exhibit called In Their Shoes, and that exhibit consists in New Jersey of just under 300 pairs of shoes of New Jersey youth who struggle with some sort of thought, some sort of mental health disorder, and they were too embarrassed to talk openly about it. And they were all the youth who lost their lives to suicide. The goal of the exhibit is twofold. First, it's to let young people know that if they're struggling with those thoughts, that they're not alone. And then second, we wanted to figure out some way to reach that 75% of the population who has no idea how hard it is to wake up every day and live with a mental health disorder. We wanted to educate, to increase understanding, compassion, and kindness towards those who do struggle. And then real quick, Community of Kindness, we want to, again, reach the population so that mental health becomes just an ordinary word. Yeah. It's no different than living with any other medical illness. So it's programs that we can do with students. We do warm air for winter. We collect socks, gloves, beanie-style hats, other items, and we deliver them to different mental health hospitals. For Christmas, we go up to Honor Ridge Academy in Clark, New Jersey. It's a school of students who face challenges. So we try to make Christmases a little bit better for others. And it started because, Christmas is different for us now.
Sure.
And Kenny said to me, I was driving him home a little bit after Christmas from a psychiatric hospitalization, and he said, Mom, they made a nice Christmas for us. So that's our hope, is to be able to make a nice Christmas for other people.
Wow.
And then what was the one we forgot?
There's a business lunch and learn.
Oh, right. Why don't you talk about that one?
Yeah, so one of the things that she talked about, one of the biggest issues that we run across, if you'll notice, like kind of through this whole process, it sounds we have a lot of programs, and really what happens is we start getting into the having these conversations with the students at first, of course, and we start getting feedback. And everything that we do is very methodical, very research-based, but the component that makes us different, the differentiator we have, is we're adding the personal stories, live, stories, which connects the students to the actual material.
Right.
And that's what everybody tells us really kind of makes the difference. Because you can go to a school and you can get this in a book somewhere.
Sure.
It's everything we do is research-based, of course, but we make it real. And one of the problems we run into is the students get it. They know their friends are struggling, or they know there's something wrong with themselves. They may not know the answers, but they know something's not quite right. Many of the faculty who are in touch with their students understand it. They know what's happening. They're not really necessarily sure what to do. And of course, pediatricians, things like that, understand it to some degree. The big missing piece in this whole puzzle is that young parents have no idea what to look for in their young children as far as mental health development goes. They almost always will assume that it's part of this normal childhood development.
Right.
If there's school refusal, if there's other illnesses happening, because sometimes mental health disorders can show up in other ways. Stomach aches, like Kenny would sometimes not go to school because he had a severe stomach ache. Well, that was actually anxiety portraying itself as a severe stomach ache, so he couldn't go to school. Now, you don't pick that up initially as a young parent. You just figure, well, maybe he ate something he shouldn't have eaten, or I mean, it could be many other reasons that would happen.
Sure.
But when you start seeing these patterns, it becomes kind of mysterious. You're not really sure what to do. So one of the goals that we have is to how do we reach the parents? And we've tried going to schools and saying, hey, let's have an event. Let's bring all the parents into the school, and let's talk about their children's mental health. When we do that, we get a turnout. However, we're now preaching to the choir. Right. Because the ones that show up are the ones that go, oh, yeah, my child is suffering. I know there's an issue. Maybe I'm going to learn more about it. It's the ones who don't know what they don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the real critical piece to this puzzle. So we got to thinking, well, how do you reach the people that don't know what's going on? And what other movements are happening right now in society? One is employers are starting to realize that if we take care of our employees' mental health, we actually get higher productivity. See, they thought of it as an expense for many, many, many years.
Right.
But now mental health care now exceeds physical health care in the insurance world. So when you are an employer, especially a large employer, and you're paying all these premiums, you're seeing what your prescription drug reimbursements are, and you start tracking all this. It is now, and I think it was in 18 or 17, it exceeded for the first time that cost of taking care of the people's physical needs.
Wow.
So now we have employers on board kind of as a group. They're just starting to understand that this is really critical. So now we're going in, we're trying to go in as much as we can. We go into employer space, and we just want to talk about good mental health practices and raise awareness about when that may be going off track a little bit with a slant towards their youth. However, we're also educating the employees. So it's kind of a two-headed, kind of a two-pronged way to get at it, because if we educate the parents, one, we're going to help them in the workspace, we're going to help the employer, and we're going to give that knowledge that, hey, maybe wait a minute, maybe that thing that my child's stomach ache, it may not be a stomach, it may not have been something they ate last night. It might be something else. If they're declining grades or there's other aspects that are occurring, well, why is that happening? Why are these things occurring? We need to start asking a few more questions, not just making assumptions.
Yeah.
I mean, they could be correct, but that's the key, is to educate young parents about what to look for. And I think we're going to get a lot more parents understanding what their children may be dealing with and actually asking the question they need to be asking. How are you feeling mentally today? How often do your parents don't ask these questions?
Sure. Right.
I mean, it's okay for parents to ask, are you feeling suicidal? You're having suicidal ideation. People are afraid of these types of things.
Sure.
But it's actually not. It's actually a release. If somebody's actually having these thoughts and so forth, and you start asking these questions, because when somebody's seriously struggling, they start losing perception on reality. They start closing in, they start closing things off, and they start focusing on the pain and how do I diminish the pain? It gets to this point where I don't know what else to do. I need help. I don't know what to do. I know I'm in a lot of pain. And this is where you get this track, which leads to a very negative result. And we want to change that, because if there's other people there at the time who at least understand it and can start asking these questions many, many times. And the research shows this. If you can pull somebody through one of these ebbs in their life, most people will make it out just fine. And this is a cyclical thing, both by age, by time frame. So they've shown a lot of youth that have made it through these really rough times grow on to live very productive, good lives later on, because they start understanding how their brain works. They start understanding what they need to do, how they need to deal with it, the coping mechanisms, things like that as they go on. So the younger we get to the students about how to manage these things, the much more likely they're going to develop the skill set they need for a long, successful life. But first, you have to get the parents engaged at some point, because they're kind of left on their own. Because we've had instances where professionals will explain this to the parents, and the parents are like, no, that's not what it is. It's something else.
Wow.
And we're hoping that we can get a few more of those, because it's kind of like a wave. If you can kind of shift it over just enough, you might start getting people on the other side saying, hey, we really need to focus on this. See, right now you got 75% saying, no deal, no big deal, no big deal. But if we kind of start shifting that over, where most people are saying, hey, you need to pay attention to these things. And it's slowly changing, but we have a ways to go.
Do you think there's on the parents' end, there's, this denial maybe, or just the acceptance of some of this,
Well, there's denial because they don't want to be, they're going to, like what happened to us.
Right.
If they come out and say, hey, my child has a mental health disorder, the reaction from many people is, what did you do wrong? What did you do to make this happen? Right?
Yeah.
What did you do to your child, right?
Yeah.
And that's the big misunderstanding about this.
Sure.
Right? And sometimes we'll have professionals go out and say, hey, look, if you just stick the family, you're going to fix the child. It must be a family dynamic. There must be something happening at home. There must be some reason for that. Well, we were not a perfect family. We were a pretty good one.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Yeah, I mean, you had two professional people who were very focused on this, and we were doing the best we could.
Yeah.
And we were, always researching, always trying to find answers. We spent 3.5 years trying to find an answer. And since then, we've met many, many other parents who, again, not a perfect family, but as a pretty darn good, stable family, by most standards. And most people on the outside had no idea. In fact, one of the things we discovered when Kenny started first being hospitalized is our daughter was very young. And so Trish had to start asking people to watch Caitlin. Yeah. And they were just our neighbors. Yeah. It was amazing how many of our friends were dealing with the exact same thing. Wow. But nobody knew it. Right. Because there's a heavy, heavy stigma towards that, towards the family and parents, they don't want to talk about it because there must be something wrong. In fact, some corporate executives won't talk about their mental health disorders because they're afraid I'll lose my job. Right? Yeah. There's all these things that we think that are just not correct.
Yeah. So Attitudes in Reverse offers a lot of resources. Can you talk a little bit about the toolkits, the youth mental health, and what is the butterfly release?
All right. Well, the toolkit is the program for the 2nd through 6th graders. They get a little toolkit. We talk about the brain, and in the toolkit they get little cards that talk about 12 different steps, things that they can do to help have a healthy brain. The butterfly release is something that we do at least once a year. And it's to remember all those that we've lost too soon. And last year we did it twice. This year I think we did it in May. We're going to do it again. We read some poems, and then we read names of those that we have lost. It's a way of remembering them. We have to talk about the people that we lost. We have to remember them. It's important. People always say, well, I don't know what to say to a parent who's lost a child. Well, the thing we want to do is we want to remember our children. So if I say his name, I don't want you to make a face or, want to get away from me.
Sure.
Right.
And I want to be able to talk about him. I want to remember that he lived. I want to remember the good person that he was. And we do that through the butterfly release.
Awesome. All right, so kind of switching gears a little bit here. Can you talk a little bit about several upcoming events that you have? I know I have here. We have with us Mr. Mumola, Mike Mumola.
The amazing Mike Mumola.
I'll take it. So before we get into your events, I want to, Mike Mumola has been a part of our show on several occasions. So Mike, talk a little bit about your involvement and how this all came, to you.
Sure. So I was introduced to Tricia and Kurt through some other professionals in the community, a local attorney and other things in the area, and they introduced the organization to me, and immediately now after speaking and listening to them for a few minutes, you see why I was instantly attracted, right?
Absolutely.
They're doing some amazing things. Just at my core, I mean, you know me, Jimmy, and what I'm about, and I really believe that all of us are here on this earth in one way or another to help each other. Sure. Especially those who can't help themselves, and I think that's what this organization really speaks to. So I wanted to be a part of it immediately, and I'm really happy that I am. I really want to help, and so whatever I can do, getting this podcast to get the word out, I think is really important, right?
Absolutely.
I think there's so much going on in society, in person and on social media, that's untrue or inaccurate with regard to how people really feel, right? We live in a world where every day you walk in, from the moment you wake up, you go get a coffee. Hey, how you doing? Great. Okay, great.
Sure.
And you're not.
Right.
Most people aren't.
Right.
And that starts early on. And in our society, we're born and we're molded into a society that really lives like that. And it's not true.
Right.
People are hurting, and they start early on, and they're suffering. And they need, because of people like Kurt and Tricia and organizations like this, to find places to say that, to know that it's okay not to be okay.
Right.
And to be able to talk about it. And the same thing, not just personally, but on social media. Everybody sees the glitz and the glamour and how pretty and how popular, and fancy cars and helicopters. And that's great. It's fun stuff.
Right.
But there's also another side that's all fantasy to a great extent, right? People stand in front of cars and houses that aren't theirs and live in a world that's not theirs. You really have to get into your own world and live in a place that's true to yourself and help find your way through the darkness. And when you can't, help find people and organizations that can help you find your way through that darkness. And when you do, find that one little piece of light, then start helping others find it. So that's why I'm here. And thanks for asking.
Absolutely. I love it. So one of the events is the 4th annual Taste of Hope. And can you guys just speak a little bit about, what that is, or what it was the first 3 years, and what you hope for it to
If
be?
you like to eat and drink, you'll love the Taste of
You
Hope.
guys have to come out, definitely. This is a good one. This is one that you cannot miss. Wednesday, October 16th, 6 to 9 p.m. at the Princeton Marriott Forrestal. You can get more information at AIR.NGO. We really want to generate a lot of visibility and exposure. We're looking for more sponsorship. We definitely want you guys out there, but it's a really fantastic event.
So that's awesome. So I see that you guys have Mike Mumola as a 2019 Champion of Hope honoree. Can you explain a little bit how that came about? And you have 2 other individuals as well.
Along with Jennifer Garofalo and with Chelsea Allen. So yes, thanks guys.
That's awesome.
We're so grateful, very grateful that you're part of the team this year.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Very cool. So what is the, is it a partnership, or how do you guys recognize these 3 people?
Clearly through these fantastic photos on the brochure, Jimmy.
Very well put together, I will say. With, Mike with the short hair.
That was when I had short hair.
Well, it's a really exciting evening of celebrating them and celebrating, their support of our cause, of our mission. And it really is truly a fun night. You can come out and you can relax, you can network. Again, as you were saying, there's wonderful food vendors. So many restaurants come, so you get tastes of all these different restaurants.
That's awesome.
It really is I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I enjoy it because I don't have to I have to say I'm not running it, so I enjoy it.
Yeah, you
So
got to
if you want to take your significant other to 16 restaurants
Yeah.
for
Wow.
one,
Come
for one
on
low price
Wow.
and unlimited drinks and dessert,
very close to my wedding anniversary too. So
Yeah.
this is one way to cover it. Yeah, we
you can
basically
stay
have
at the Marriott.
there's some great restaurants from all over the area. They're like the best of the best. So yeah, it's really good, and we make sure we always have different types of restaurants too.
Yeah,
We
for
always
sure.
change it up a little bit.
yeah, that's awesome.
So
Having fun with it.
A lot of
Almost 30 of
food,
them.
yeah, a lot of
Almost
food,
30.
a lot of variety, a lot of local restaurateurs, drinks, and some great people from the community, from all over actually. So it's a great networking event. It's a great opportunity to eat and drink and just share a taste of hope.
Love
And that's
it.
what it's about.
Wednesday, October 16th, 2019, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Good stuff. So outside of one of these events, how else can people get involved with A.I.R?
Well, one of the biggest things is donations.
Yeah.
Donations, we are a small organization, but we receive no government grant funding. So events like Taste of Hope and individual donations is how we're able to get out and reach kids.
Wow.
I'm always looking for help as well. I travel all across New Jersey, and when I do the In Their Shoe exhibit, we need at least 3 cars because sadly 300 shoes take up a lot of room in cars. And then it's setting up, and then it's breaking down. We're really excited. We did do our first training about a week or so ago of several people who are interested in becoming presenters of the Coming Up for A.I.R presentation. So I'm excited about that because I've been trying to figure out how to clone myself.
Right.
And that's been the challenging part. So I see, hope in finding people who are going to be trained, who are willing to go to schools and be able to share the same messages that I share with students so that we can actually reach more students.
That's
And,
awesome.
and there is information on the website there, the AIR.NGO. They can always call the office. There's some social media set up, but just reach out and see what's going on at any given time and see how the organization needs help. And just by participating, you really are, whether you realize it or not, helping to save lives.
Yeah.
Absolutely. She forgot about the therapy dog teams, which is what she does. So she kind of.
Let me elaborate. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I can't talk over Kurt's voice. I know this.
That is impossible.
I have to excuse myself. To elaborate on what Tricia just,
Yeah.
and talk about, you mentioned Mickey for a second. Mickey, I think you said, was the #1 therapy dog in the country.
In
What,
2011.
2011.
Wow.
But Mickey didn't start off that way. Mickey was
Mickey was a rescue.
a rescue.
Wow.
Yes, we believe he came from a puppy mill and he was in a pet store. He was not sold, and then we were able to get him.
With very little hope, right? And so you see
Wow.
where this is going. When people care and put in their time and their energy for animals and each other, great things happen.
I love it.
Yeah, and the dogs, as I said, the dogs are just a really cool part of what we do because the kids respond. Oh my gosh, you get to walk into a room and nobody wants to talk, but you walk in with the dogs and their faces light up, and it's just amazing.
And can I say one of the things that Tricia told me that stuck with me is, they'll do these presentations in an auditorium full of students and administration and ask, are there any questions? And maybe they'll get some, maybe they won't. But then at the end, there might be a small line of students, right? 4, 5, 6 kids lined up on the side, just saying, hey, can I talk to you for a few minutes or something that's on my mind? And to know, right, that those are the ones who really, really need it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And a lot of them come up to pet the dogs, and a lot of them actually say, hey, can we talk while they're petting the dog so it doesn't look like they came up to look for help. So I was at one high school where there was a young girl who was triggered by our presentation, and she was crying uncontrollably. She refused to talk to a counselor. And then I sat down with her, with one of our little dogs next to her. And in less than 5 minutes of petting, it was Goober's the dog. Goober. In less than 5 minutes, she stopped crying, and she got up and she walked away with the counselor. And I didn't say anything to her. All she did was pet a dog.
Wow, it's powerful.
Yeah.
Wow. So A.I.R saves lives. And I was just curious. I was on your website. There's some testimonials. Is there anyone that kind of sticks out to you all?
Well, the ones that touch my heart are from the young people
Yeah.
who say thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing stories. Thank you for talking. Because of you, I got help.
Wow.
And that just, because I have to say, there's some days it's like I say, why do I do what I do?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Right? No benefits, no vacation, and it's like, why do I do this?
Yeah.
That's why I do it.
Right.
And that's, and it's interesting. On days when I'm having my toughest day, I'll get one of those emails.
Wow.
Or a Facebook message or something, and someone just says thank you. It's like, okay, I have to keep doing it.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. So I do see that you all have a partnership with College of New Jersey's Testing and Assessment and Psychology Lab. Can you elaborate a little bit on what that's all about?
I'll start off. I'll let Trish finish it because she'll fill in the detail. But basically, yeah, one of the we're gathering a lot of data.
Okay.
And as Trish pointed out, we talked to over 80,000 students. That's one of the reasons all these programs have been developed, because we're one-on-one and we constantly researching and finding out what the needs are and how to implement the needs. So we really are experts at this now.
Right.
And so we continue to get better and better at it. Well, now we're going to take that to kind of another level. We're going to start actually documenting it. We're going to go ahead and get what's called evidence-based, which means we proved out the concept through the samplings of the different schools that we're going to and the different administrations to find out exactly what is effective, because anecdotally we know it works. I mean, as Trish was telling you, we've had a couple students go straight to hospital. We have a huge amount of positive feedback when we after a presentation. Kids that they had no idea. I mean, we've had students come up. They found out in these surveys that we do that literally nobody knew in the administrative level that some of these students were struggling at all. Yeah. And the students were really saying, hey, I'm concerned about this particular student, and it wasn't even on the radar screen of any of the administration.
Wow.
So that's how powerful this is, and that's why it's so important for peers to understand how much power they hold within to help their fellow peers in a positive way, because there's a lot we can do for each other. And with the younger we learn this, right?
Right.
We learn this at a young age. Maybe we take that on through adulthood and maybe kind of do what Mike was talking about, help out a little bit, because these personal connections are far more important than being on Facebook, right?
100%.
I mean, it's that one-on-one connectivity and learning empathy, learning how to work with people and things like that. And so we're documenting all this now. We're documenting what we're doing, and TC&J has been wonderful. Dr. Kernan has helped us out, and she's putting together the structure. So they're doing a lot of the structural parts of it, and we're gathering the data, and together we're partnering literally together to make this happen. So really we want this to be even more. I mean, we're a national lab, but we want to roll it out even more. So once you have kind of figured out exactly how to do it, now you can start replicating, which is what we're starting to do.
Right.
Right? So you got to nail it down, replicate, tweak it as you go along. But we're at that phase now where it's time to power this thing up, really take it on big time. That's what this is all about.
Awesome. Bishop, do you want to add anything?
I think you you covered it all.
All right. Woo. All right.
So
A plus.
All right.
With connecting with the community, with people like Mike Mumola, connecting with the College of New Jersey's Testing and Assessment and Psychology Lab, where do you guys see yourself, or where would you like to be, or where do you visualize yourself in the next 5 years?
We're going to take over the world, man.
I love it.
Don't limit it to that. We're going universal.
I like it.
We'd love to have more presenters.
Yeah.
To be able to reach out. Our goal is to talk to students in every single state. Because kids are struggling across the country. Suicide rate of young people 10 to 24 increased in the last couple years. It went from third leading cause of death to second leading cause of death.
Wow.
That's the message I get across to kids. It's getting worse. It's not getting better. And most suicides are preventable. So we want to have trainers across the country, but at least across New Jersey.
Sure.
And be able to meet every need for every school, so we can talk to every student who really is struggling.
Yeah, a big thing, we want to prioritize mental health because that's the one kind of like the like Star Trek, right? The Final Frontier.
Right.
It's really the one we're not hitting head on. And when you're talking about 20% of students and 25% of adults are dealing with some type of mental health disorder,
Yeah.
how are we missing this one, right?
Right.
So if we start prioritizing this, just like physical education, all these other great things that we do when we're young, and create this diversity and understanding the importance of things, simple things like sleep, right? Balance. These things that we start to learn maybe when we get older and we realize, well, what the heck was I doing in my teens and my 20s? Maybe I need to balance my life out a little bit, right? These are things we try to train ourselves as adults. Well, we need to start helping the students because when we were younger, I mean, my wife and I are a little older. I'm older than her, so I'll sound.
I'm older than
oh,
you.
sorry.
What are you
I'm sorry.
talking
I was going to say. I was going to be nice here for a minute, but no. So But when we were younger, you spent time outdoors, you spent time doing things and really assimilating all this information. I think we've gotten almost too good at delivering data to our students. Right. So it's so easy to overload young people without and they don't quite have that ability to process. And we need to learn the value of downtime. Right. And we don't really tend to value that, the creative time, that thinking time. What was all that information for? Right. Processing relationships, all these things that we just kind of, I mean, you talk to young people and they're literally booked from the time they get up to the time they go to bed.
Right.
And then and so that's just not a healthy situation.
Right.
So we're hoping to essentially prioritize mental health and teach good mental health habits to our young people everywhere.
Awesome. So can you explain what you think contributed to the current success you all had? So A.I.R's been around for 10 years, correct?
Just over 9 years.
Just over 9 years. You do all this data mining. You do all this face-to-face. You guys talk to over 80,000 students, and you have people like Mike Mumola involved, and it's just getting bigger and bigger. What do you think is contributing to that? Obviously, you're passionate, about A.I.R, but what do you think could, gets you up every single day to build it, even bigger than what it already is?
I have to say I'm reading your shirt.
Yeah.
Faith, hard work, and gratitude.
That's right.
Blessed. I mean, I that's what it is.
Yeah.
Working hard, being grateful for the things we have. A lot of people say, well, how can you be feeling blessed or feel grateful you lost your son? And I said, I'm grateful for the years we had.
Wow.
He was a gift. And if he didn't go through what he went through, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing today.
Wow.
We wouldn't be saving kids. So that's really, I love your shirt.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's true, and we've because we have lived experiences. When you match lived experiences with expertise, there really is no greater power. Right. So when you have lived experiences, that helps obviously. But you need the data and the information behind it, and that's kind of what we've been able to combine together. And now we're trying to replicate that and bring other people in with lived experiences, get them to come forward when they're able to, train them the way they need to be trained, and replicate. So that's the process we're in now.
Yeah.
But I think that's what's made the big difference is that when we go in and we're talking to students or people in a workspace or whatever the case may be, they know it's real.
Yeah.
They know it's a real experience. They know that we're telling them the truth.
Right.
We have nothing to hide or anything like that, obviously.
Sure.
And many more people will come out and discuss it because they actually want to discuss it. Because it's very therapeutic to discuss these things, these emotions, these things that are going on in our brain that maybe we don't quite understand exactly. Well, we can help each other with that. We can help each other understand why their brain is working a certain way and make it better. And ultimately be happier as a society. Everybody could be a little bit happier.
Yeah, for sure.
There's no reason to be miserable when you're living in the wealthiest country in the world. You should not be miserable.
Right.
That's a problem.
Right.
And we'd love to fix that problem.
I love it. Can we just step back just a little bit? You did mention that you're looking for presenters, trainers. What qualifications, if for anyone who's out there listening now and would like to be a part, what kind of things are you looking for in an individual?
Welcome aboard.
Yeah.
Well, somebody who has no issue talking in front of people.
Sure.
And the joke is that I'm really shy.
Sure.
And if you ever told me I'm talking to 750 kids at one shot, I would have told you there's no way. But
Right.
I've done that,
Right.
and it wasn't so bad.
Right.
But we are looking at some people who are retired teachers, people who are available during the day so that they can go into schools, who are comfortable talking to students and who
Sure.
are comfortable talking about the mental health part of it. They don't feel any stigma.
Sure.
You know, because we just put it right out there.
Yeah.
And that's what the kids appreciate, because when we put it out there, they know they don't have to feel stigma.
Right. Awesome. All right, cool. So just a real quick question that I love to ask all of our guests. With, we're talking about even kids now. I said this the other day. I feel like my 5-year-old son has a busier schedule than me. How do you guys do? How do you manage the work-life experience? How do you even make sense? So it's not so.
I'll let Trish start. She's got the toughest schedule.
It's hard. It's really hard.
Absolutely hard.
I work 7 days a week.
Yeah.
I run a dog training business. We do A.I.R during the week, and I just started working at Penn Medicine Hospital because there was just some wonderful opportunities there for me.
Yeah.
In networking and then sharing some of my experiences. It's just a lot of balancing, knowing what I have to do, planning for things. If I know I'm going to be in school 3 days and I have something I have to get ready for Saturday, I have to make sure if I have a little bit of time on Monday, I'm going to do it. So it's just looking ahead as much as I can look ahead. I don't usually look ahead too far.
Sure.
But it's just trying to keep everything in balance.
I think, yeah, she's right. I mean, I think a key to this is time management and booking time for yourself. Because you really need to book downtime, because we have to practice what we preach, right? We tend to be very good about getting enough sleep, right? Because we see that in our young people, where they should be getting 8, 10, even sometimes 12 hours of sleep, and they're not. They're simply not getting enough sleep, and we feel that might have been one of the issues with Kenny. So as a family, we're very focused on making sure that happens. And so if you schedule even the downtime or times of the week or the periods of that you're going to be to take care of yourself. Self-care is critical.
Sure. I
mean, there's a lot of high-stress jobs out there, and I think adults need to learn that as well. But our students are dealing with the same thing. Yeah. And so that's kind of how we do it. We're trying to practice what we preach, because we're learning a lot as we go through this process, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that's it, time management and really booking that time to manage yourself and take care of yourself and have some self-care in there.
I love
Absolutely.
Love it. And Mike, I want you to chime in on this one, because you always also have great advice.
I think it starts with awareness, right? It's like, spending money. People don't really, realize what they're spending because they don't keep track of it. It's the same thing with time. And you have to become a student of your calendar. And in order to do that, you have to be aware of what you're doing with your time. The social media is an endless. There's no end. People don't realize that. When you get on Instagram, there's no end to that story. You can be up until 4 a.m. Same thing with Fortnite. Same thing. So you really have to start becoming aware of what you're doing with your time, and then start figuring out how you want to prioritize it. Once you do that, then you can figure out what things you're going to do and when. And I can't agree more with Kurt. From us talking in the past, I'm a huge believer in meditation. As busy as I am, and we all are, for me personally, it gets me grounded. It gets me back to center. So, I will find 20 minutes a day, twice a day, no matter how busy I am, to get back to center as things are becoming unraveled. Because it's that important, right? I can't put the oxygen mask on you until I put it on me, because I need that in order to figure out exactly what's going to happen and when, to kind of have a clear vision. So it starts with awareness, I think, and then some focus in terms of organizing your schedule. And then I think the last part of it is to get into a flow. I think there's a difference between grit and flow. And so many people today are trying to grit through life. I got to do it. Really, you want to get into a state of flow where you can take the good with the bad and understand the purpose of what you're doing and continue moving forward and accepting the trials and tribulations, but keep moving in the right direction, and that'll keep you going, being aware the whole time of where your time is spent, where it can be better spent, and just continuing to hone in on that.
Well said. Thank you. I guess for my last question I have for you all, what's your recommendation to anyone trying to raise awareness for mental health and suicide prevention?
Not being afraid to talk about it.
Absolutely.
That's really what it is that it's just that stigma that people think it's about choice, and they have to understand it's not. It's about an illness. Nobody chooses to have a brain illness.
And I agree with Tricia. It's, it comes back to fear, right? Fear of what people might think of me, or fear of what people might say or do. It's just, if you want to raise awareness, get out there and start talking, start, knocking on doors, ringing phones, sending out emails, and start talking about things. Let's talk about the things that people are afraid to talk about. That's what we need to do. We're emotional creatures, and somehow we've grown into a society where everything is academic and technological, but at our core, we're emotional creatures. We need to bond and exist on that level and start talking about it. That's how we're going to find a cure.
Absolutely.
No, what I was going to say along the same lines is really we need to become far more empathetic and receptive to how other people are feeling, and really hone in on the skills to really identify in each other, like when maybe they're struggling a little bit. So if we start like focusing on how we can help each other, right? So there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 7 people in this room right now. So we're all focused on trying to help each other. You got 7-on-1 now, right? Instead of 1-on-1. Isn't that better?
Right.
Isn't that better to have us looking out for each other,
right,
and really developing a sense of empathy and caring and love for each other? Because that's what really carries the day.
Sure.
Right? And that's really what we're here for. We're here to see what we can do while we're here to help others. That's it.
Yeah.
Right? There's a greater purpose than ourselves. And when we project that out into society, and we try to help each other in any way that we possibly can, we feel better about ourselves. Right? And we also help everybody else. So we need to kind of make that the priority, to do the best you can for other people, and you'll come along for the ride.
I love it. Awesome. Well said. So there you have it. Where can folks, get in touch with you all, whether it's social media, websites, anything you want to plug?
Website, email's the best.
Okay.
So it's A.I.R, AIR.NGO.
Okay.
And they can reach us through email. So social media, I'm on Twitter. Took me a year to figure out how to do Twitter. I'm on Instagram, but I
Nice.
have a volunteer in Phoenix who helps me with that, because
Nice.
I still haven't figured that one out yet.
Sure.
And I'm on Facebook, and no one else is. So
Yeah, everything links
hilarious.
onto air.ngo. So if somebody
Okay.
goes to air.ngo, you can find all the social media sites that we're on. There's a contact form there. You can reach us there. All the opportunities, including the Taste of Hope, are there. All the stuff funnels through the air.ngo site.
Perfect. All right, so there you have it, folks. We like to wrap things up with quotes, and the first one is by Anne Frank. How wonderful is it that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world? And the second one is by Albert Einstein. Strive not to be a success, but rather to be of value. So there you have it, attitudes in reverse. In this episode, we had special guest Mike Mumola and the crew from A.I.R, Tricia and Kurt. We cover topics that range from mental health, suicide prevention, volunteer work, saving lives, and much more. We wrapped the episode up with quotes from Anne Frank and Albert Einstein. Awesome. Guys, thanks again for joining us. The Rotated Views podcast was produced for self-development purposes. Huge shout out to our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Blessed Lifestyle brand. That is BL3SSED.com. Also sponsored by The Motivation Files Unleashed. This motivational mixtape will be your fuel for success. Available on all platforms. Guys, don't forget to visit the website, JimmyleeVelez.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Rotated Views. If you have any inquiries or questions, email us at info@JimmyleeVelez.com. On behalf of myself and the rest of the crew, we wish you massive success. Stay blessed.